Hi, everyone, and welcome to Artists Offstage. If this is your first time with us, Artists Offstage is a web series where we get to know each of our members of the Resident Artist program. So I would invite you to go back and check out the other interviews that we've done so far. But today, we have with us Celeste Marie Johnson, who is our Resident Artist Pianist and Coach. Welcome. How are you today?
You. I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great, great. Enjoying the slightly warmer than usual March weather.
It feels
All,
balmy right now.
yeah, it does. I know I'm trying to like temper my expectations that we are probably going to get back to a cold snap. But it's nice to see some snow melt. So like I said, this is just kind of a chance for us to get to know you as an individual. Um, in a regular season, we're normally, seeing the resident artist in all of these different places, performances, events, and things like that, where we get a chance to kind of talk to you in person. That's not really a thing this season. So we're kind of using this as the medium to get to know you. So I'll start off the way that I start all of these interviews by just asking, what is your story?
Yeah. So I actually fell in love with theater before I fell in love with music.
Okay.
One of my earliest memories is going to see a production of The Wind in the Willows at the Children's Theater here in the cities with
Oh,
my
wow.
mom. I think I was 5. And we had read the book together before. She read the book to me. I loved it. My parents read out loud to us a lot, and I loved chapter books and I loved the stories. And I remember, I think we got there a little late, so things had started, and we were ushered in, and I had this feeling of entering a world, a new universe that was different from my everyday existence, but felt really all encompassing. And that was thrilling. I remember that feeling.
Hmm.
And I was lucky enough to get to go to a lot of different productions growing up. I saw my first opera when I was 6 at
Oh,
Minnesota Opera. I saw the Magic Flute. And again, I loved it. It was that same feeling of immersion
hmm.
in an experience, immersion in a story. And I sort of, even as a kid and still as an adult, like I can't really think of anything like better than that.
Yeah.
Um, and my parents really took the time in taking us to these shows through the education, going to see the dress rehearsals.
Hmm.
They would take a lot of time with us beforehand to explain everything that was happening, and we would listen to the music together. And I remember, this is when I was a little older, but we had these, plastic Playmobil figurines, and um, they were prepping us to go see The Marriage of Figaro, and actually acted out the whole story with these little people so that we would be able to follow everything that was happening. So I just had an incredibly positive experience going to see shows like that, and loved it from the get-go. And then I started piano lessons pretty early. I started playing when I was 6.
Okay.
And I was also in choir. Again, I was in choir before piano. Um,
Hmm.
so I started singing in choir when I was 5.
Mm.
And loved both of those things. I think I knew it was around when I was 9 or 10, is when I remember thinking, I really like this. I think I wanna do this in a really committed way.
Hmm.
My mom has said she never had to tell me to practice. I don't remember, but that's what she says.
Wow,
But
that's
I think
kind of
it's
unique.
yeah, it's just always something that I wanted to do, and I was very much the one who was like, okay, I'm gonna try to practice X amount a day because I want to really do this. Um, and then pretty early on in high school, when I was 13 or 14, I actually ended up with a playing related injury.
Mm.
Partly because I have tiny hands; they're like kid size hands. So I was starting to play bigger rep, but it it was too big for my hand, and I kind of didn't have the technical skills I needed to be able to navigate that in a way that was healthy for my body. And I ended up not being able to play for several years,
Wow.
which was really devastating,
Yeah.
because I already knew at that point, like, this is what I want to do. Um, and during that time, I started taking voice lessons because I knew that I needed some musical
Mhm.
outlet. I needed to be participating in music some way, and started writing more. I started writing poetry and prose for fun again, just to uh, be expressing myself creatively. And I don't remember a specific turning point, but somehow out of all of that, my um, aspiration shifted away from being a concert pianist, which is kind of what I had imagined initially,
Mhm.
um, and shifted more toward, is there maybe a way to incorporate, I'm discovering that I really like all of these different things. And I was able to retrain and start to get back to playing at the end of high school. And I knew I still wanted to do that, but I had also found and cultivated love for other areas. And then when I was, I think, 16 or 17, I came to one of Minnesota Opera, their Day at the Opera events
Mhm.
for high schoolers. And I remember hearing at some point in that day what a vocal coach was. And
Yeah.
I was like, you got to be kidding me. That can't, there's no way that that's a real job, because because that's literally everything I like to do. That has, it's playing the piano, it's singing, it's dealing with text, it's dealing with stories, it's being in the theater, dealing with languages. And so I honestly, like, ever since I found out what it was, it felt it just clear to me that um, that was a fit with my interests and passions. And so I did my undergraduate degree in piano performance,
Mhm.
which I think is pretty standard. But then starting with my master's, I've been collaborative all the way.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Um, yeah, it's so interesting to hear. Because normally when you hear about, people taking piano lessons early on, for parents, it's like such a hard thing to get your child to practice.
Mhm. Yeah.
So it's unique to hear that it was the opposite case for you.
Yeah.
Um, so, I mean, you kind of mentioned that like around 9 or 10 is kind of when you started thinking about piano a little bit more seriously. Um, when you put yourself in like the shoes of a 5-year-old version of you, like what did you want to be when you grew up?
Um, I mean, actor was definitely on the list for
Okay.
a while. That was something I was really interested in.
Yeah.
I think there was a brief period when I was maybe 8 that I thought math was really fun, and maybe I wanted to do that. That was really short
Interesting.
lived, because the math got hard, and I was like, oh, never mind.
Yeah.
I was a voracious reader, so I think part of me has always wanted to be an author too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting, interesting. Um, so I mean, along the way, like who would you say have been sort of your biggest cheerleaders or supporters throughout your
Yeah.
career, throughout your musical journey, life journey?
Yeah. I mean, I think hands down, my parents go at the top of that list.
Yeah.
Um, they were and have been so supportive for my whole life. And I mean, even looking back, to that period when I was injured, the amount of commitment that they had to my dreams and my goals during that really difficult time, and were willing to do the hard work of, okay, let's try different treatments, let's drive and visit these different doctors and like find a way for you to be able to do this. Like, I I really never felt like their belief in me wavered.
Mhm.
even through that. And I mean, clearly also they took me to a lot of things, including, I mean, we, my parents live south of Rochester.
Okay.
Um, and my senior year of high school was actually an apprentice with Project Opera. I was the first ever. So after the day at the opera, we heard about Project Opera and we heard about the apprentices, and I went to Jamie Andrews and said, so I want to do this, and I'm a pianist.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay, we can find a way to do that. Great. And they just created a space for me to be an apprentice with Project Opera, and that was a really defining experience my last year of high school. But that involved, driving regularly about an hour and a half,
Yeah.
and just, that kind of regular commitment of time and energy and resources. And yeah, I've just had unwavering support from them the whole way.
That's
Um,
awesome.
and also incredible teachers also along the way. So names that come to mind are Teresa Dibvig, Jane Abbott Kirk, Eileen Cornett, Arlene Strutt, Javier Arebola, people who I've been able to look to as role models, not just for their incredible musicality, but also for their personhood and an approach to life and music making. And yeah, I'm so grateful for all the people I've met on the way. And then more recently, my partner and I have been together, I think a little over 4 years now, and he's also become a really huge supporter of the work I do in a very, day-to-day kind of way.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
And for those listening who might not know what Project Opera is, that's our opera training program for youth ages 8 to 18. They usually meet on Saturdays for morning rehearsal. They put together a whole opera that's only students, sets, costumes, orchestra, all the things. Obviously, this year looks a little different, but yeah, those kind of experiences can be pretty transformative. And yeah, so I'm glad to hear that had a really positive influence on your life.
Yeah, so I mean, it's incredibly full circle on every level.
Yeah.
To be back here. I mean, when I got the offer to be a resident artist this year, it was very emotional, because I remember that day at the opera. I remember we got to sit in on 20 minutes of a rehearsal, and I had that feeling of, if I could do anything, like, this is what I want to do. And to be able to now be on the other side of that in that same rehearsal room
Mhm.
feels really special.
Yeah. So, I mean, since we're on the topic, can you tell us a little bit more about, like, what does it mean to be the resident artist, pianist, and coach? We've kind of heard a little bit about what the singer track might normally look like, and even talking with Frankie earlier in the season about the technical track. So what does it mean to be the pianist, coach, resident artist?
Yeah, I think vocal coaching is an interesting area, and even many people I meet who are full-time musicians and instrumentalists, like, don't necessarily know what a vocal coach is, because it's
Mhm.
so specific to the vocal world.
Mhm.
The sort of short way I usually explain it to people is, singing is really, really hard. um it's just incredibly demanding in so many different ways. And typically singers, and working with their voice teachers, focus on the mechanics of, how do you physically make this happen.
Mhm.
And because there needs to be so much time and energy devoted to that, I feel like the coaching role is, it kind of helps complete the full equation, because I deal with the aspects of singing that don't have to do with how do you actually physically do this. So
Mhm.
things like working on languages, musical interpretation, looking at the theatrical side of things and how, you know, in moment to moment, how does that translate musically, and how do we find the magic of combining the two. And so yeah, so I feel like I help kind of complete all the different areas that singers have to think about and focus on, which is a lot.
It definitely is a lot. And not to mention that in a normal season, another thing that would be on your plate would be to be the rehearsal pianist for each production, which is, I mean, that's a whole another set of responsibilities. That's huge too.
And another set of skills. That's very much its own.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so since we're kind of talking about kind of what your career path has been now, what would you say are the biggest, I guess, both the rewards and the challenges of choosing this career path?
Yeah, I mean, there's the pragmatic side of things, you know, that it can be hard to plan too far in advance. I've moved a lot um, as an adult. There's, you know, some amount of uncertainty. But I think on a more philosophical level, I think in some ways the challenges and rewards are almost the same, in that I feel like one of the biggest challenges is never feeling like I'm there. I kind of never feel like anything's good enough. I never feel like I'm like finished working on something, even after I perform it, or this year after I record it. It doesn't feel done, and I rarely, you know, I have a sense of, well, I'm not working on that anymore, but not necessarily a strong sense of completion. It's usually more the feeling of like, oh, okay, well, I'm excited to come back to that down the road, because I think next time I want to try these different things, or I want to approach it in this different way. And that can feel hard. And like, oh, you know, like when am I gonna get there? Like, when am I gonna feel like I've done what I want to do? And I think that's also a huge reward, of getting to do work that is kind of continually requiring me to grow as a person and as a musician on every level. And you know, I've spoken to other people in my life who um, kind of wish that they had something like that, that always felt like there was another, you know, horizon to be pursued. So yeah, I think that's simultaneously challenging and wonderful.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It makes me think of, I guess, so there was this opera singer who was like 80 plus years old. I'm blanking on his name, who is still taking voice lessons, and someone asked him like, why are you still taking lessons? And his response was, because I think I'm making progress.
I love that. And I think it's such a gift to, I mean, to me, music feels like something that it's this thread that goes through my entire life. As other big things in my life have shifted around, and as my relationship to it has changed and evolved over time, it's still this constant, something that's been with me for a really long time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So when you think about sort of the nature of what the resident artist program has been this particular year, and given everything that is happening currently in the world, how do you think you've like evolved as an artist this year?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting year. And we're coming up right about,
The year mark?
yeah, it was almost exactly a year ago that my partner Keith and I flew from Boston to Minnesota to stay with my family, because everything at the school shut down and I didn't have access to a piano, and we didn't know how long it was going to be. So I've been thinking a lot about how those first couple of months felt, and so much uncertainty of not, you know, knowing what was going to happen in this field, and within that, really, and I would say the year overall, it's felt like a unique time to really sit with the why. I think, you know, especially as a collaborative pianist, I usually have a lot going on, and there's a lot of different projects and um, periods of time where I'm just kind of like, okay, what do I need to do today to kind of try to stay afloat and on top of all of this? And there's been more space this year and opportunity to examine again, as I have before, you know, why do I want to do this, and how do I want to do it, and um, why do I think that there's something of value here to society and to the community where I live, and what would it look like for me to be part of enacting that? And I think, yeah, I think that's really valuable reflection time because it translates into a renewed sense of purpose
Mhm.
and direction in the art I make.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, so since we just kind of mentioned that we're in March now, a year, almost a year mark, March is also Women's History Month. Um, so I guess a question for you is, you know, just who are some female artists who you think maybe more people should know about?
Yeah, I'd love to take this opportunity to highlight the three composers I programmed for my artist showcase, Apart Together.
Hmm.
All of us in the Resident Artist program got to create our own projects. Um, and all of the composers I chose are American women. So I'm going to refer to my notes here to make sure that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't say untrue historical things. But
We're
going,
fact checking this, by the way.
yeah, okay, great. Sort of going in chronological order. Amy Beach lived 1867 to 1944. She was a composer and pianist, really prolific composer. She wrote more than 150 numbered works in all genres: orchestral, church music, chamber music, songs, piano pieces, and she was the first a woman to have her work performed by organizations like the Boston Symphony Orchestra and the Handel and Haydn Symphony. Um, so very much a pioneer.
Hmm.
Um, and Margaret Bonds lived 1913 to 1972. She was also a pianist and composer and teacher. She was the first Black person to perform with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra
Wow.
as a pianist. And she also wrote in many genres. She was good friends with Langston Hughes. So there's some wonderful, wonderful settings of his poetry
Mm,
by her.
yeah.
She has some really great, the piece that's on my showcase is an arrangement of Wade in the Water. She has a lot of wonderful arrangements of spirituals. And then Minneapolis's own Jocelyn Haagen, who was born here, um, and has also written her work focuses very much on the voice. She's written a lot of songs, which are her songs of fields and prairies
Hmm.
is on my program, and she's also written, you know, choral things and some very large scale multimedia, really exciting works in recent years. And she's been commissioned by Minnesota Opera to be the composer for the Song Poet with Project Opera.
Yep.
So
That's very exciting.
yeah,
That sounds like it's going to be a wonderful program. And I can't wait to hear it.
I'm excited. And yeah, I mean, if any of you listening haven't heard any of those names, I would encourage you to maybe do a little Googling
Yeah,
or look up some things on YouTube, because there's, yeah, they wrote just some fantastic music.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be doing that after this. So you know, when you're not working, when you're not practicing, what do you like to do? What are your hobbies? What are your I don't know, interests?
Yeah, yeah.
Non-music related interests.
I find as a pianist, you know, I mean, I just put in a lot of hours on a bench.
Mhm.
Um, and I find that uh, for me, at least, to have a sense of being healthy and being a whole person, I really have to incorporate activity into
Mhm.
my life when I'm not at the piano. So I love things like walking. I run a little bit. I love yoga. I want to be a yoga teacher someday.
Cool.
Um, yeah, so things like that. I love hiking. Hoping to do some backpacking again this summer.
Nice.
But yeah, just sort of in some ways it feels to me like kind of the counterpart to the piano work, and that it nourishes the other side of me that I need for that work too.
Mhm.
I also love, you know, cooking and baking and reading things and hanging out with my friends, things like that.
Nice. Anything that you've read lately that has resonated?
I'm currently reading Thich Nhat Hanh is one of my favorite authors. I'm reading his book on fear. I think the full title is, I wrote this down too. Fear, Essential Wisdom for Getting Through the Storm. So it feels like a pretty appropriate
Yeah.
right now. But his writing is always, uh, he's one of those people who can say multitudes with three sentences, and I'm always in awe of how dense his writing is and yet completely approachable.
Yeah. Interesting. I'll have to check them out.
Yeah.
Um, we always like to close things kind of on a high note, on a positive note. Um, so where are you currently finding joy and inspiration?
Yeah, I definitely one of the top sources of joy in my life these days is our cat. His name is Pushkin, and we adopted him at the end of July this past year. And we're sort of not sure what we did in the evening before we had a cat to watch. But he's a very friendly cat, and he's also just really ridiculous. So kind of high entertainment value, but also a great. I kind of feel like he's a role model in many ways in terms of, you know, cats just are who they are and they
Mhm.
do their thing, and I'm someone who's very prone to overanalyzing and overthinking, and he never does that. He just, you know, is a cat, and so like, he's a great reminder for me to just, you know, just be a person. um I also have been so grateful for all my friends and especially my colleagues here. I feel like, and I'm sure there have been wonderful resident artists in the past too, but I just feel like I lucked out, and
Yeah.
the other people in this program this year are such lovely humans, and I am just constantly inspired by them and by their creativity. And I love, you know, bouncing ideas back and forth off of each other, and I always feel so enriched from getting to work with them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always interesting just kind of seeing the unique dynamics that each set of resident artists kind of brings.
Yeah,
And yeah, I would totally agree that this is a very positive group, a very nurturing group. Yeah, it's wonderful to see that.
yeah.
Well, I just want to thank you again for taking this time to talk to me, to talk to us, us meaning anyone watching this. I feel like we got to know you a little bit better today. And yeah, I would just say best of luck on the rest of the season and any future endeavors, and I can't wait to see your showcase on Apart Together coming up pretty soon now.
Pretty soon. I think they're getting released in April. So
Awesome.
yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been really fun.
Absolutely. Well, I'll catch you soon enough. Take
Sounds
care.
good.
Bye.